There is a plant growing in abandoned lots right now. It contains more protein per leaf than eggs, gram for gram, leaf for leaf. It outperforms almost every cultivated vegetable on Earth. It fed the Aztec Empire for 8,000 years. It survived droughts that destroyed corn, no irrigation, no fertilizer, no pesticides, and it still thrived. In 1519, Spanish conquistadors outlawed its cultivation, punishable by death. They did not ban it because it failed. They banned it because it made people too strong to control. A crop that feeds without dependence, that grows without permission, and spreads like civilization itself cannot be owned. And what cannot be owned becomes dangerous. This is the story of the plant that built empires, survived genocide, and still waits in your backyard. Before we open this vault, understand something. Knowledge like this disappears when no one defends it. If you want access to the plants, foods, and systems history tried to erase, subscribe now to The Hidden Harvest. These vaults do not stay open forever. The archive opens in the highlands of Mexico in 6000 BCE. Long before the Aztecs, long before the Maya, the first farmers of Mesoamerica domesticated 3 sacred crops: maize, beans, and amaranth. They called it huautli. The word means the smallest grain of sustenance. Amaranth was not supplemental, it was foundational. Archaeological sites across Mexico reveal amaranth grains stored in clay vessels, grinding stones worn smooth from processing seeds, and murals showing the entire harvest cycle. By the time the Aztec Empire rose in the 14th century, amaranth was woven into the fabric of existence itself. The Aztecs consumed 20,000 tons annually. That is more than they consumed of beans, nearly as much as maize. Tribute lists from conquered territories demanded amaranth alongside gold and jade. It was that valuable. But amaranth was more than food. It was sacred. Every year during the festival of Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun, priests mixed amaranth seeds with honey and human blood. They shaped the mixture into massive statues of the god, some taller than a man. The ceremony involved breaking the statue and distributing pieces to the people, eating the god, becoming the god, communion through amaranth. When Hernán Cortés arrived in 1519, he saw fields of amaranth stretching for miles. He saw the festivals. He saw people united by a plant that required no Spanish seed, no Spanish tools, no Spanish control. He understood immediately. This was not just agriculture, this was sovereignty. Cortés issued a decree. Any indigenous person found growing amaranth would have their hands cut off. If they persisted, execution. The Spanish did not just burn the fields, they burned the stored seed, they destroyed the grinding stones. They hunted amaranth like it was rebellion itself, because it was. A people who can feed themselves without external supply chains cannot be controlled. A crop that produces 50,000 seeds per plant and grows in the worst soil cannot be eradicated easily. So the Spanish made it heresy. They linked amaranth to paganism, to human sacrifice, to witchcraft. They did not have to prove it was evil. They just had to make people afraid to grow it. It worked. Within a generation, amaranth nearly vanished from Mexico. Farmers who had cultivated it for 8,000 years stopped. They switched to wheat, a crop that required European plows, European irrigation, European trade networks, a crop that generated dependence. But amaranth survived, in hidden gardens, in remote villages where Spanish soldiers never reached. Among the Mixtec, the Zapotec, the Nahua, they saved the seeds in secret and passed them down like contraband, and amaranth waited. Let us talk about what the conquistadors were so afraid of. Amaranth leaves contain 6 to 9 grams of protein per 100 grams of fresh weight. Eggs contain 6 grams per 50 grams. Gram for gram, amaranth leaves match or exceed eggs. And unlike eggs, amaranth contains all 9 essential amino acids in ratios that approach complete protein. The lysine content alone is double that of wheat. The seeds are even more absurd. Amaranth grain is 14 to 18% protein, wheat is 10 to 13%, rice is 7%, but protein content is not the full story. The protein quality is what matters. Amaranth scores 75 on the amino acid profile, higher than milk, nearly equal to meat. In 1979, the National Academy of Sciences published a report calling amaranth one of the most promising crops for alleviating world hunger. It cited protein content, lysine levels, and the fact that amaranth thrives in conditions where conventional crops collapse. The leaves are loaded with calcium, 3 times more than spinach. Iron content exceeds most leafy greens. Vitamin A, vitamin C, folate, magnesium, potassium. And squalene, a rare compound usually extracted from shark liver, amaranth produces it naturally. Squalene boosts immune function and has been studied for cancer prevention. Amaranth does not need nitrogen fertilizer because its roots penetrate 6 feet deep, pulling nutrients from subsoil where wheat and corn cannot reach. It grows in heat that shuts down photosynthesis in other plants. It survives drought by closing its stomata during the day and opening them at night, conserving water while still growing. Some varieties tolerate soil salinity that would poison conventional crops within weeks. One plant produces up to 50,000 seeds. Each seed weighs less than a milligram, but contains the nutritional firepower to build human tissue. The leaves can be harvested repeatedly without killing the plant. Cut it back, and it regrows. You get food and seed from the same plant in the same season. This is why the Spanish feared it. Amaranth represents total food independence. No purchased inputs, no trade dependency. Just land, rain, and seeds you save yourself. You cannot control people who grow amaranth. After the conquest, amaranth vanished from official records for 400 years. It was no longer cultivated commercially. It was not mentioned in agricultural texts. Botanists catalogued it as a wild plant, a relic, a curiosity with no economic value. But in the 1960s, something changed. American agronomists studying native crops in South America stumbled across amaranth growing in remote Andean villages. They sent samples to research stations. Tests confirmed what the Aztecs knew. This plant was extraordinary. By the 1970s, amaranth was being studied in universities across the United States. In 1979, the National Academy of Sciences published the report. Suddenly, amaranth was the future. Seed companies began selling it. Farmers in the Midwest planted experimental plots. Health food stores stocked amaranth flour and grain. Cookbooks featured amaranth recipes. For a brief moment, it looked like amaranth might return as a mainstream crop. Then the backlash started. Amaranth was difficult to harvest mechanically. The seeds were tiny, easily blown away by wind. Conventional combines lost half the yield. Specialized equipment was expensive. Processing the grain required different machinery than wheat, and amaranth did not fit into commodity markets built for corn, soy, and wheat. Agricultural extension offices started publishing warnings. Amaranth was classified as a noxious weed in some states. Palmer amaranth, a wild relative, became resistant to glyphosate and spread across cotton and soybean fields. Chemical companies responded with stronger herbicides. The narrative shifted. Amaranth was no longer the future. It was a pest, a problem, something to eradicate. But here is what they do not tell you. Palmer amaranth, the wild species causing problems in industrial agriculture, is edible. The leaves are nutritious. The seeds are edible. Farmers are spending millions poisoning a plant they could harvest and sell. But harvesting does not generate herbicide sales. It does not create dependency. It does not require annual seed purchases. So Palmer amaranth is a weed. Cultivated amaranth is niche. And the narrative remains. Amaranth is impractical for modern agriculture. What they mean is amaranth is impractical for industrial control because amaranth still grows in abandoned lots, along roadsides, in gardens where people plant it once and harvest forever. Across Africa, Asia, and South America, millions still eat amaranth daily. In India, it is called chaulai. In China, yin choy. In Kenya, terere. In the Caribbean, kalaloo. Half the world never stopped eating it. They just do not call it a superfood. They call it dinner. In the United States and Europe, amaranth is marketed as ancient grains sold in expensive packages at health food stores. The same plant growing wild in ditches is suddenly worth $5 a pound when branded correctly. The plant has not changed. The framing has, and that framing reveals everything. Amaranth was systematically erased not because it failed nutritionally, but because it succeeded without dependence. A crop that perpetuates itself, that feeds communities without external supply chains, that grows in conditions where industrial crops collapse, represents everything modern agriculture fears. Food sovereignty. You cannot patent amaranth. It has been open source for 8,000 years. You cannot genetically modify it to require proprietary chemicals. You cannot create hybrid varieties that farmers must repurchase annually. Amaranth reproduces freely. One harvest produces enough seed for 10 acres. That is why it was banned in 1519. That is why it is classified as a weed today. Not because it fails, but because it succeeds on its own terms. The pattern repeats across history. Sunchokes were too perennial, purslane was too resilient, chufa was too independent, fava beans were too medicinal. Every plant that enables food sovereignty is systematically marginalized, demonized, or erased. Not because they harm people, because they free people. And free people are harder to control. The Aztecs understood this. That is why they made amaranth sacred. That is why the Spanish made it illegal. Power does not fear starvation. Power fears populations that can feed themselves. Amaranth still offers what it always offered: complete protein, drought resistance, self-perpetuating seed, the ability to grow food on marginal land without chemicals, without machinery, without dependence. Climate change is accelerating. Droughts are intensifying. Heat records are breaking. The crops feeding 8 billion people were bred for stable climates. That stability is ending. Amaranth was bred for chaos. It stores water in thick stems. It closes stomata to survive heat. It produces seed even under stress. It grows where wheat dies. When industrial systems fail, amaranth will be ready. It has been ready for 8,000 years. Mexican grandmothers still grow it in backyard gardens. African farmers still harvest it alongside maize. Asian cooks still saute the leaves. The knowledge survived conquest, survived suppression, survived 500 years of erasure. Because you cannot kill amaranth without killing the soil itself, and even then, seeds buried 40 years ago will germinate when conditions return. This plant teaches what empires want buried. Abundance does not require permission. Sovereignty grows from seed, and no decree, no herbicide, no industrial system can erase what people choose to remember. We did not lose amaranth. It was stolen. But theft is not final. The seeds are still here. The knowledge is still here. Every gardener who plants amaranth and saves seed is an act of resistance against a food system built on dependence. Every leaf you eat is a refusal to forget what the conquistadors tried to erase. The Aztecs called it huotli, the smallest grain of sustenance. But there was nothing small about what it represented. It was freedom. It still is. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to the Hidden Harvest and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.